Rohan Patel, comic book movie. Hi Brad, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Big fan of yours, and I loved Atlas. So I just wanted to get started with, since we have seen AI movies, we've seen, since forever, but we've seen movies like Terminator. We even saw The Creator last year, but Atlas kind of takes it. I guess now like AI is here versus like when Terminator 2 was the AI was a hypothetical almost.
Yeah.
So what something new that you wanted to say with Atlas that how these humanity and sort of AI can coexist, in a hypothetical future.
Yeah, I think like the movies you're naming, I'm a big fan of those movies, and I think that initially my kind of tack or approach with AI was different because I just don't want to replicate or duplicate what's already been done. So what I thought was more timely, more nuanced, a little more interesting for the time we're in is to show both sides of the coin, which is the extremes of how AI could go badly and how it could possibly go positively. I mean, we work with a futurist on this movie, and he talked about the ecology with me. He talked about like, weapon systems, engine systems, AI, obviously. And the thing that I kept coming back to was that AI is a tool. Like it's not all bad or all good. Even if it was fully sentient today, the only place it would be all bad or all good is in our imaginations because it would most likely live in the gray zone. And the fact of the matter is, it comes down to how people use it and how responsible they are with it. So this movie was about showing that and starting that discussion as opposed to like, yeah, AI is all bad. They're the bad guys. I wanted to show sort of both sides of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then when you're directing someone like Jennifer Lopez in this movie, where she's acting opposite, like I know she worked opposite in Anaconda before, but this time she's really working opposite something that's not actually there,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of visual effects. So what are sort of methods that you use as the director to kind of get her in the right headspace to perform opposite? She's working opposite Smith's voice, but every like the environments are very,
Yeah.
I'm assuming, the effects created.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's my responsibility to try to make sure that the cast and all the creatives are there to succeed, and I have to supply them with everything that's in my imagination so they know what's going to ultimately end up on the screen. So I, of course, supply her with, and all the cast who want it, every design I have, every image I have previs for everybody. A lot of them prefer really not to see that. They just want to sort of be in the emotion of the scene. And a lot of my time was spent sort of developing a way of shooting her where she could be as intuitive as she needed to be. 'Cause she's a very, very intuitive actor. So specifically, the biggest sort of difficulty to overcome was her in the arc suit by herself, like you spoke about. Now, part of the reason I cast Jen was the fact that she is a global superstar who's used to going out and performing to stadiums by herself as basically the person who's like leading the charge. So she was a little more naturally adapted to be in a situation like this where she wasn't opposite another cast member. I think a lot of actors would have been terrified by that. She kind of embraced it right away. And then my approach was, instead of like doing classic coverage where, okay, I'll shoot two cameras, we'll break them down. I'll shoot two more cameras, we'll break them down. I set up 4 to 5 cameras at once and tried to shoot her entire performance or the entire scene in one go so that she could just emote, get inside the scene, not think about the technical any more than she had to. And so she really excelled in that environment. So yeah, it was a combination of, casting the right person with the right attributes and then working with them in order to focus my approach to support them in the best way, which is ultimately, I think, my kind of like number one role as a filmmaker.
Mhm. Yeah, and she's amazing in the movie. And speaking of casting, you also have to get Smith's voice, and I would assume it's tricky casting because you have to get this reassuring, but also that can go back and forth with Jennifer Lopez. So, like, what was it? What was the process behind casting? I think it was Gregory James Cohen who voiced Smith. And what was your process like finding that right voice for the movie?
I love that you asked the question because the story behind this is like phenomenal. So basically, we knew we needed someone to just be in the scenes opposite her, and they sent me like 10 different tapes. And when I heard Greg, I was like, well, this is how I picture Smith. Now, what we were doing was we weren't casting the voice. We were just casting someone to be there on the day to help read the scenes with her. So Greg came onto the movie as literally like a day player, like just a person who shows up, gets in the booth, and just talks to her during the scenes. However, like because he sounded the way I pictured him, I just treated Greg like another member of the cast. I talked about Smith's arc. I talked about how he communicates with her in terms of this scene versus the middle of the movie versus the end of the movie. And by about halfway through the production, I realized as soon as everybody sees this movie cut together, they're going to fall in love with this voice, because everybody would come up and be like, he's great. Where'd you find him? And I didn't say anything to Greg because I was like, listen, there's like, it's a big deal. Like, you know, there's sort of an expectation that we're going to recast by the time we get into post. But I knew it wasn't going to happen because he's perfect. He's like pitch perfect in the role. So I felt really like lucky, and it felt really good to be able to like give this guy this massive break in his career simply because he's perfect. He was like the way he looked at his job was, I'm here to support Jennifer Lopez. I'm just here to help her. And then one day I said to him, I'm like, well, lucky for you, that's also what Smith is here to do. He's literally in this movie just to help Atlas. So there was a lot of just luck coming together to like make that all happen. And it's really fortunate, and the movie benefits for it in a big way because he was there for the whole ride. He was there from minute one.
Awesome. Yeah, he is absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And so when you also have these couple of like with Sterling K. Brown's character
Yep.
near the third act, there is this one pretty, I don't want to spoil it, but there's kind of a gruesome body horror type scene with him and Simu. So what was the process behind getting that scene? Or how did you actually like pull that scene off? And is that something that's more, because this movie does get kind of dark, but so what was the process behind getting that scene and getting those kind of scenes together?
Well, first of all, I have to get. I love that we're gonna ask and answer this question without giving away what the scene is. This is very enjoyable for me. So we had to ask his permission, and then he said, "Yes, you can do that to me, but please do it for as short a period of time as possible." And I was like, "No problem." So I set up 3 cameras. We used the mechanism on his face, and then we got it within 90 seconds. And so what I loved about it was I knew it was going to get a visceral reaction, and it did. Every single time we played that scene for an audience, it got a visceral reaction. And it's probably that scene that ended up making me fall in love with horror a little more, because I was like, oh, I get the joy of doing this. I mean, now I sound like a crazy person, but it's like there is like this sort of joy in doing scenes like that because they are visceral. They make you feel something like right away. And so it was also important to like show how heroic Sterling is and how villainous Simu is. You know, I felt really lucky because this cast is like top to bottom amazing. I definitely felt like I was surrounded by movie stars, because at this point, you know, Sterling hadn't been nominated for the Academy Award, but meeting him and working with him, I was like, oh, this guy's a movie star. Simu, obviously in the Marvel Universe, movie star. Jen, movie star. So it was really fun to be able to go in with all of those guys and sort of maximize their characters, play around with them, and yeah, invent moments like that, because they're real game. Like they really want to show up and do their best work possible. So it was really fun.
Yeah, so yeah, no, I immediately rewatched it because I was like, "Is that real? Is that real?"
Oh,
But
it's very real.
yeah, no, it looks awesome in the movie. And then I don't want to keep you too long, but I mean, there's a possibility you could expand the universe, obviously. But was it a little freeing that this could stand on its own as its own standalone movie where you don't have to worry about setting up a larger universe? I think you spend like 20, 25 minutes setting up the world, and then you
Yeah.
throw it into
Yeah, I mean,
particularly action.
I felt like I had to set up the story and set up the world in the sense of, you know, what has happened, or at least allude to what has happened before the story kicks off. So that's where you sort of see like the rebellion of AI in that first, you know, very quick little opening title
Yeah.
sequence. But I am very focused on just executing the narrative of the first movie. I don't fall into the trap of, oh, this is a franchise, da da da. It could be. Absolutely. Like this is a world that I would be open to exploring a lot more. I have other ideas. For me, like the only time I would go and attempt to do something like that, where you're sort of setting up more of a ongoing thing, would be if I took on like a piece of IP, like the like GI Joe or Gears of War or something like that, which are like projects that I've always dreamed of doing. And I would look at those and go, okay, there are so many angles into this project, or there are so many pieces of material that already exist. I have to treat this in some ways like the big, huge chapter one of this world. Atlas is more about, I'm going to treat this like a standalone movie. And if we need to build out further from here, I want to make this chapter and this piece incredibly satisfying. So that's my singular focus when I go in to do a movie like this.
Yeah, so and you achieved that, man. The movie's great. So I really appreciate your time, Brad. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got it.